Okay guys, today I'm going to change the rear valve cover gasket on this 98 Buick Riviera, and I don't know what I'm going to encounter. I've done a little bit of research, but nobody's real clear on what you need to do. So I'm going to start by removing the alternator. It looks like the biggest obstacle so far, so we'll start there. But in the beginning here, I changed the front valve cover yesterday, and I'll give that a little explanation. Okay, you can see here that yesterday I changed the front valve cover. There's not much to this, so there's not really any explanation needed on the front valve cover. I think it's pretty explanatory. The only thing you got to do is remove this spark plug wire holder here, and it's got two clips on the bottom of it here that you just pull out, and then you lift it up. You can see these little ribs down in here. It just slides down onto those ribs. That's an easy removal. Pull the spark plug wires out, and you can pull the spark plug wire up over the top of the motor mount here, and you can pull the other spark plug wires on the back side of the filler neck here, the oil dipstick. These wires here, once I got it loose, I just took all these and tied them back with tie wraps. I undid this little clip right here, pulled this wire up on top, tied it back with a tie wrap just to get all this wire out of the way. You don't have to remove the coils. You can barely wiggle it down through there to get it on and off. I did clean all of the surfaces off with brake cleaner prior to opening up the engine. I also, one time before I got the car, there had been some mice in here, and there was a bunch of nuts and things down inside underneath the supercharger. I blew all that out with air, get all that out of there so none of that went down inside. Put the new gasket on, cleaned off the surface, basically put it all back on there, and did a cross pattern on tightening the bolts to 80 inch-pounds. And I drove it yesterday, and I don't have any leaks in that valve cover. So that being an experimental fit, we're going to tackle the back here. I'm going to take a couple of pictures. Well, not pictures, but at least I'll have video of, you can see the valve cover barely down in there, but it's obvious that all this bracketry and all this garbage up here on top is going to have to come off. So we'll start by removing that. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to remove this heater hose, which looks like a bolt right there. Pull it out. It's probably an O-ring in there. I'll try and twist it up and tie it up with a tie wrap to this. We'll see how this works out, but let's start by going here, pushing towards the windshield to loosen the belt. We'll take the belt off. I've already taken pictures of the belt routing. That's another tip that you might want to do if you don't know what your belt routing is. But we're just going to drop the belt off for right now and get that alternator off of there. Okay, there is three forward-facing or right side of the car facing bolts, 13 millimeter, I believe, to get the alternator off. And there's one 10 millimeter that goes back here, goes to this bracket right here. And when you get ready to move the alternator, we want to take this clip and remove that wire. Then you can take the alternator and set it up here on top of the motor or somewhere out of the way. And don't forget where that goes. If you do forget where it goes, just if you have a feeling you're going to forget, mark it with a piece of tape. Okay, I have the alternator bracket out of the way. Had one bolt that goes in the supercharger back here. This vacuum hose goes around and ties into one end of it. This thing sits like that, actually like that. This comes around and attaches to this, and I broke it. The fitting is good, but I got to find a piece of tubing that will go around and reconnect that. It's vacuum. Anyways, as you can see, once you get this loose and get the vacuum lines disconnected, which I also disconnected the vacuum booster hose going to the brake system right there, which I don't know what I got to get on the other side there yet quite, but it's pretty evident that I'm going to have to take that motor bracket off, possibly. I don't know if I can lift it up out of there or not. Got to get that wire disconnected right over there. I got this wire loom disconnected from this motor mount, or motor pull bracket. I'm sure I'm going to have to loosen that one because I had to loosen the one on the front. And right now we're going to take off this heater hose line that goes, I assume is a heater hose line, goes into the heater there. Through some research it says to disconnect that you'll lose a little bit of water, twist the hose up, and then tie wrap it up here so you don't lose all your water. We're going to give that a shot next. Okay, let me put this light down. I think the best deal to get rid of the spark plug wires is to disconnect them over here at the coil and then bring them over here and back around this side. Just lay them out of the way. And then I think we got a pretty clear shot here. A pretty clear shot at this side of the valve cover. Then I got to work on that one over there and see what I'm going to have to get out of the way. Okay. I'm having trouble with this little 10mm bolt down here. Put my 5-sided 10mm socket on it and tried to get it loose, and it rounded the head off on that bolt. Not exactly sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'm trying an old trick, putting masking tape in the socket. We'll see if that works. I also sprayed it down with some WD-40. Okay, as you guys can see, the masking tape, the WD-40, and tapping on the screw worked. So once I get this out, maybe we can move that piece of electronic poop or whatever it is back there. Okay. Okay, guys, I don't know whether I got to it. Got in kind of a hurry. Anyways, I broke a vacuum line here. And you can't see it too good. Right there. And it goes to this dealie that I was trying to get loose with the 10mm bolt on the end of the supercharger, which I eventually got out. As you saw, I've tied the rest of the wiring up with tie wraps here to the fuel rack going across. I had to loosen up 2 bolts on this guy, and I didn't take them out, which is going to make it easier to put them back in because I don't have to see the holes. Just tighten them up. And the same thing with this bracket here. I loosened it up, let it fall back out of the way, although I did have to take off this thing right here goes in that hole right there. So to get that wire out of the way. But as you can see, I believe that I have a clear shot to my valve cover. So I'm going to rinse it off with a little bit of brake cleaner. I've got a towel down there on the floor. Well, it's a sheet, but it doesn't really matter. Anyways, I'm going to try and clean some of the goop off of here before I get started, and then we'll take this valve cover off of here, hopefully. Oh, and you can see that I tied the wiring loom over there back to the transmission dipstick. So it's just a matter of tying a lot of this stuff back out of the way with tie wraps. It wasn't really as complicated getting to it as I thought it was going to be. Still more than there should be, but nevertheless, we're there. So, and I have a couple broken parts that I'm hoping I can get some tubing to stick over it and fix those vacuum ports. But that's okay. We'll take care of that. That's not a problem. But anyway, let's get this cover off after I clean it. Okay, guys, what I want to emphasize is, you can see I have a lot of brake cleaner sitting down here. But what I want to emphasize is cleaning off with the brake cleaner around where the injectors go. Just because that's where it seems to accumulate a lot of crud, and also along the top right here of where the head is, because we just don't want anything falling down inside the head when we take the valve cover off. Not so worried about the valve cover itself, not so worried about the downside. We can get that when we get it off of there. We do just want to make sure that it's clean along the cylinder head there, and you can see that I've got it pretty clean. I'm going to go ahead and blow this off with air, and then I'm going to continue on taking it off. Okay, guys, I think where I screwed up on the supercharger is I think those bolts are 3/8. They're not metric. But anyway, I put a 3/8 on the valve cover here. I had to get these out, and I believe they're 3/8. But nevertheless, my screw up. But anyway, as you can see, we can now lift the valve cover off, and right out of there. Got to get the gasket off, clean the surface, clean the valve cover. But it looks pretty good inside, as did the front one. But let's see if we can get this booger cleaned up and get the gasket on it and get all this put back together. Okay guys, I think you can see here that I pretty well have the surface cleaned off all the way around. Can't see it too well. But you want to make, at least in my eyes, you want to make sure you get that cleaned off pretty good, because what happens is, let me see if I can get my finger in here, along where the gasket goes, what happens over a period of time is it develops a little ridge of crud there. And I wouldn't want to put the new gasket back on and have it sitting on that ridge of crud. So I went around it with a screwdriver and scraped it all off. Then I went around it with a little bit of 400 sandpaper to just make sure that I got all the ridges off. And it looks pretty good, and I think it's going to work. By the way, some places that I've seen guys changing gaskets on other 3800s in Chevys and so forth tell you to put some Permatex or something in the gasket groove, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But after taking these two covers off of this engine, I would not recommend putting any adhesive whatsoever on any part of this, because it would just make this job hell. And I don't think it helps. So anyway, we'll move on, and I'll clean up the valve cover, and then I'll show you how the gasket fits. Okay guys, here's the cleaned up valve cover. What you want to do is make sure you get all the grit out of the groove there, so that your new gasket and oil and stuff out of there also, by the way, because you want your new gasket, which is either rubber or appears to be silicone to me, but you want it to adhere, not adhere, but you want it to stay in there long enough for you to get the valve cover down on the head without it falling out of there. And I had pretty good luck with the front one, and I hope I do with the back one as well. Also on these bolts here, you want to make sure that they're cleaned off pretty well. The top is not too important, as long as where this bolt sits on the washer doesn't have any grit under it, because that will affect your torque when you torque it down. But you want to make sure that this inside is clean, because you're going to put this inside of a little grommet, and I'll show you that here in a second. Okay guys, I'll show you. You can see the grommets and the bolts are inserted into the valve cover. Here's the gasket set that I'm using. It's a Felpro. Everybody told me that it's a pretty good brand name. Well, I know it's a good brand name, but it's a good one to use on this application. And here is the number. It's a VS50465R, and it seems to work good. I mean, well, we don't know that. That remains to be seen. But the point is, it fits well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Here's how it fits in the groove, and it's like 2 times as thick as what you see sticking out here. The gasket that I took off was completely flat. I think what happens is the give or the springiness goes out of the gasket, and then they start to leak. But anyway, that's what it should look like. And when we put it on, I'm going to tell you now, because I know it's going to be hard to stop in the middle, but once I set this valve cover down where it goes, I'm going to go from one side to the other side to make sure that the gasket hasn't fallen out of the groove here or at this end here. And obviously if it has, I will be able to see it along here, because you can see the edges of it. And I may be able to even see one end. But the end that I can't see, I'm going to lift it up just a little bit and see if I can get my finger under there, make sure the gasket's still in place before I hand tighten the screws down, and then we'll get into tightening everything. Okay guys, here I am on the far side of the engine where you can't see very well, and I decided to instead of just relying on lifting it up and feeling it, I got a mirror here, and I'm looking at it, and it's on top of the head, and it's still in the groove, and I haven't even tightened this, hand tightened this screw in the corner right here. But most of these you can turn with your finger. This particular one, or there's a couple here that I will turn by my little 3/8 on it. But anyway, I just wanted you to see that I've gone around the whole thing and checked it with the mirror, and everything is in place. Okay guys, here's the book or the manual, and you will notice right here, it says 89 inch-pounds. And then it says to reconnect the spark plug wires and all the other stuff that we've already taken off. So they make it look simple. It's only 2 paragraphs here, but it's much more involved than that. But anyway, the whole thing is the 89 inch-pounds right there. Okay? So we're going to tighten them up to 89 or 90. It's hard to tell on my little inch-pound wrench, but there it is. Okay, here's my wrench, my little wrench. I can adjust. Oops, hang on a minute here. Hold on, Newt, she's rearing. Okay, I can set it to 0, and this adjusts for temperature and so forth. Then when I turn it, we're going to go to 89, which is right up there. You can, well, I don't know if you can see it. It's probably out of focus. But anyway, 90 is right down there. So let's get to it. Okay, guys. While I'm in there and I have all this junk torn off, I had a second thought to go get plugs and put plugs in the back and the front, for that matter, but at least plugs in the back today before I put all this stuff back on. So here we go. And then I had to go get a couple small pieces of vacuum tubing. I've broken a couple of vacuum tubes and not fittings, but the vacuum tubes themselves. So anyway, I had to take a break, go do that, and we'll get started again. Okay, guys, I got everything hooked up back under here. Got these vacuum hoses hooked up. Got one vacuum hose that goes on when I put this piece back on, which is the bracket for the alternator, and this device, whatever it is, works off a vacuum. I did break one vacuum line that goes under there, and I got a piece of rubber tubing and reconnected it. It goes around to a T-fitting down in there, which is still connected, and then it goes up and goes, I don't know, it goes somewhere. Doesn't matter. But anyways, I got to replace this piece of rubber from this pipe around to the end of this. This goes into this end of that. But I just wanted to give you a little progress update. Everything on that side over there is tightened up. Now we're going to concentrate on getting this side back together. Got the new plugs in the back, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, guys, this is the proper routing for the belt, the alternator belt. You should not have had to take the front one off, but if you did, here's the routing for the supercharger belt. Leave it here for a few minutes. Of course, you guys can probably pull a picture off of the video. Anyway, here's the routing for the alternator belt. This is, what you have to remember is the alternator goes directly down to power steering, I believe that is, up around the tensioner, then around the water pump, then around the crankshaft pulley, around the air conditioner, and all the way back up to the alternator. But anyway, I had a hard time figuring that out, so I had to refer to the book. But anyway, there's the routing, and let's move on. Okay, guys, here we are under the hood. I have the alternator. I have everything back on. I have not started it. I was checking everything, make sure I had that water fitting back on, which I do. Make sure there's the little piece of rubber that I had to replace right here that broke. That's plugged back into that sensor. That vacuum is plugged back into there, which goes to where that green thing is right there and goes on that way. Got that all plugged in. Got the wire plugged in the back of here. Never disconnected those wires down there. Have to make sure, and I don't know, it's kind of dark down there. Anyway, somewhere down there, the spark plug wire is attached to this bracket, this motor pulling bracket here, this motor support bracket. And I did that, ran the wires up under the alternator bracket, over the top, connected them back. Also tightened up this bolt on the back of the alternator, tightened up the bolt right here that goes into the supercharger that also holds the alternator bracket. It's plenty sturdy. We'll go around here on this side. Made sure this bracket was tied back in. This wire is attached through this through a hole right there. This wire is attached back there. Plug this back in, put the cap back on it. By the way, this is a little cap that comes off and holds that plug in. It's kind of unusual. Plug the vacuum booster back in, routed down under everything and over to the vacuum booster. Made sure that that bolt down there is tight, and the one, you can't see it now. There's a bolt, yeah, that bolt right there is tight that holds this bracket that goes around this device here, whatever it happens to be. Routed the cables back through their support here. Routed the vacuum lines back through their connector here. I also had taken this one loose so I could move these lines back. I got them back in place. Just scanning over everything. I did give the rest of the engine down here, the transmission and so forth, a shot of brake cleaner just to rinse some stuff off of there. Everything's good up here. Replaced the plugs in the front. Ready to put the cover on over the engine, and we'll start it up. Maybe I'll start it up first and then put the cover on. But anyway, you can see the vacuum lines connected here. So, let's start it up. Okay guys, I must have done something right. It started right up. Seems to be running good. Very smoothly. Still on fast idle. Everything looks like it's good. I don't see any fluids coming out anywhere. The engine's not shaking. The car is relatively smooth, just like it always is. I don't see any wisps of smoke or anything yet coming up. What I am smelling is the brake cleaner boiling off of the intake manifold, which is pretty normal. So I think I'll let it get up to temperature and put the cover back on the engine and call it good. Guys, I forgot to mention, and I'll add it here in the video, but the job wound up taking me right at 5 hours, including changing the spark plugs. And I worked at a relatively leisurely pace. I didn't find that I needed any special tools other than your maybe inch-pound torque wrench. Aside from that, it was pretty much standard tools. One of the things that helped was a swivel head ratchet. I think it would have been a little bit harder without that. Aside from that, everything was pretty straightforward. So anyway, let's see how it runs, and we'll go from there. Okay guys, the cover's back on. I don't see anything abnormal happening back here. We're going to call it good. Okay guys, I hope you were able to use this in some way. And I think we're all good to go. And as I always say in all my videos, come back and see us again.